And we're back after a brief break. You're watching South Texas Now. This is Attorney Joe Flores reminding you to join us each and every week right here on KRIS, KZTV, and the Lopez family. Special thanks to Don Humberto Lozano Lopez. He passed away in 2011, but he's honored, he's venerated, and he's never forgotten. And my good friend, Carlos Lopez, you guessed it, the Ted Turner of Spanish TV. And with me today, I have the distinct pleasure of bringing on Terry Shamsie. You know him, you love him. He was your judge, county, then with children, and now he wants to be your district attorney. I couldn't think of a better lawyer. Hi, Terry, how's it going?
Oh, good to see you. Going well, thank you.
Yes, how's the campaign going?
It's going well. I mean, there's a lot of activity, a lot of people working hard to get the Democratic candidates elected, and me being one of them, so it's a good unified effort.
Well, the voters need to know who you are. They see your campaign signs everywhere, but tell them a little bit about yourself.
So I've been practicing law for about 35, 36 years, mainly criminal defense. I've served them as the county court number 5 judge, which handled the CPS cases. I've served the public as an assistant county attorney also, and then I've served them as county judge for 4 years, from 2003 to 2006.
That's a lot of service. And
yeah.
Were you in the DA's office?
I was not. I worked for Carlos Valdez when Carlos Valdez was a county attorney. And so at that time they did misdemeanor work plus civil work. So I was in the civil section.
Oh, okay. And now that you've been out of the private sector, you've been representing people of all walks of life.
All walks of life, federal and state, different jurisdictions.
Let's talk about the district attorneys. Now, there was a concerted effort a few years back, if I recall, of putting people on of diversity, putting people on that would see, you know, from a different lens, maybe not just from the quote-unquote victim's lens, but also first-time offenders.
Right.
And I'm also seeing some groundwork, people getting caught first-time meth, Lortab, Xanax. They might be decriminalized down to misdemeanor from felonies, maybe. I don't know what the legislature has intended. What do you think about all that?
Well, I think that's where we're headed. I think the legislature is going to change it because of the overburden of the cases on the district level, the felony level. And that's coming because they're handling those small quantity cases as more of a way to resolve the issue, the drug issue, the use issue, versus a dealer. They're trying to separate the two. And that's coming. It's already done informally with the DAs around the state. Now it's going to be something that the legislators will act on.
And when doing that, I mean, isn't that more of a burden and a cost? Because you've been a county judge and you've seen the bottom line. What costs more, incarceration or rehabilitation?
Rehabilitation, but it depends upon who's paying.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, if it's rehabilitation, it's local facilities, and then that's the county that pays. Right. The county pays that.
Okay, and so for those that are fiscally conservative, who isn't nowadays,
right.
I mean, how do we justify it?
Well, you justify it that you save the money that the state would pay in housing an inmate. So the state pays, you know, they have different numbers, but it's usually 3 to 1 what the price is from a residential treatment versus imprisonment. So if you're spending $3 imprisonment, it would really only cost you $1 to put them in a treatment facility.
So roughly more than half of the savings, 66%.
By far.
And these people, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions, you know, that, you know, they've got to hit bottom, right. They've got to lose everything, you know. So, I mean, what are we seeing with that and the veterans? I know that 20 years of war, people right. coming out, DWIs, there's shell shock, PTSD, right. and then they're taking drugs. What sort of things would you, as DA, do for veterans?
Well, there's a veteran court now. Mm-hmm. They're diverted into veterans court, but I think there needs to be a tighter coordination with the VA itself. The VA locally provides a lot of benefits. A lot of the veterans are usually, when they come into the system, they're at the lowest that they've ever been. And so what I think that they should try to do is utilize the resources at the VA, because once they get out of the criminal justice system, right, they need to make sure that they're getting their treatment, getting their medication, and the benefits that they've earned and deserve through the VA. And sometimes they don't want to do that. Sometimes they don't want to go get the mental health treatment, or they don't want the assistance of the VA, and we need to assure them that it's their right and it's they earned it. and not to be ashamed to take advantage of the benefits offered.
Well, as far as the most vulnerable, we're also talking about people that are aging out that also may get a DWI. They're depressed at 60. I mean, or 90, accidentally hit somebody. How do you deal with seniors in the system? I mean, I personally have had seniors, and it's very difficult because of early Alzheimer's, dementia, whatever reason.
It's a big issue.
And health.
It's a big issue, health and their mental state. A big issue because they will do something that is not characteristic of their history, right? And so you really need a prosecutor, and you need a provider that can give insight to the prosecutor and the defense lawyer as to why this occurred, what's the likelihood of it occurring again, and how can you minimize the risk. But that's a big deal. We have an aging population in this community, and I see more and more of my clients in the 50s and 60s never have any criminal history. All of a sudden they get hit with a DWI or family violence or something of that nature, right? And that usually stems from being on medication, untreated mental illness for a long period of time, and something happens, right? So it's a growing problem for the judiciary and for the DA's office.
And how do you work with the police, state, local, coordination with Sheriff's Department, with CCPD? How do you envision doing that, since you've already been in the system?
Right. It's got to be a very close relationship with the local police department, because they know what offenses are troubling them most, which ones should be prosecuted and given priority. You know, a lot of people are arrested, but they're not going to be repeat offenders, right? So you can kind of call them out. And if you have the input of the police department, those officers know the street, and they can tell you the risk factor of that particular defendant. They have a pretty good judgment call. This one is, although we only arrest them for a minor offense, they're involved in other gang activity or other crimes.
Which segues into people are scared out there. They're wondering, the cartel going to encroach more in our land since we're in South Texas. You know, what's the situation on gangs, if you know?
Well, I think a lot of the cartel and that are handled on the federal system, right? The feds have the resources, and they can put the cases together. And as you know, when the feds put the case together, they're pretty strong, right? Those cases, they do their homework, and they have the resources and the time to do it, right? So when they do a sweep, they might pick up 30 people, and then everybody's on the list, right? And so I think locally, though, the gangs are not as sophisticated locally as they were, and a lot of that has to do with the feds being involved over a period of time. They're dangerous, but their danger is not what it was back in the early 90s, where they really ran the show. Okay, so we have gangs, but I think the police department and the feds have a pretty good hold on who's out there and who's the risk factor.
As DA, working in the jail, segueing into that, many of the people housed in there, 1,000 or so. I don't know how much capacity is right now. I haven't had the sheriff on in a while, but the gang members, how are they separated so there's not chaos? And then the first timers coming in on a Saturday night?
They said the jail separates them based upon risk factors, about what gang they belong to, what the offense is. So they're doing a good job segregating. The problem we have is the inventory is building up. The violent inventory is building up, and whenever you have that, more and more dangerous people in the local jail, it's dangerous for the officers, it's dangerous for everyone involved.
And mental health, it doesn't discriminate. So you've got, what, quarter, a third in jail that have some sort of mental issue or trauma?
The percentage is probably higher, it's probably around 60% plus.
Wow.
No, it's very high.
Well, how does the DA handle that? Because I know in Texas, you've got to be Charles Manson to, I mean, get non-compos menace. Even they tried him, guilty.
Yeah, you're not going to get, very, 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 very rare, you'll have someone charged with a crime that's going to be found incompetent, right? Most of the time it's mitigation. In other words, well, they did it, but they have this mental illness. That falls on the defense lawyers to put the package together. And if they spend their time, they can put a pretty good package together. The problem is they're overwhelmed as well as the DA. So a lot of that slips through the cracks.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes left,
Yeah.
but I'll ask you, how do you envision running the DA's department different than the last decade or two?
Well, I think the emphasis has to be put on ethics and morals, right? I think one of the problems that is still in the system, and it's growing, it's grown in the judiciary with Ina Klein, lack of morals and her ethics issues has plagued the judicial system. And prosecuting division, it has been the problem of not getting all the evidence to the defense attorney timely, right? That's a big deal. And because of that, ethics is number one, because the prosecutor has to realize that they have an ethical duty to gather it. It's their duty, no excuse, their duty to gather the evidence provided for the defense lawyer and supplement it. If they don't, they're cheating the victim and they're cheating the defendant, because what happens if there's a violation, the case is thrown away, right? So the victim doesn't get any benefit of relief, and the defendant walks. Right?
So it doesn't do the victim or the assailant, alleged assailant, any.
Huge issue.
Yeah, huge.
Because the government has a lot of power and money. So if you're going to prosecute someone, you better have your evidence and all your cards together. If you don't prosecute, you don't move forward. And we've seen that time and time again on big cases where they start it, they accuse someone, goes 3 years down the road, and then the case goes to nothing.
Terry Shamsie, your next DA, knocking on 200,000 registered voter doors. Why should they vote for you?
I think I'm the most qualified. I think that I can bring change to the DA's office that's needed. Jimmy Granberry's there. Him and I both have about the same level of experience. I just bring a different twist. I have an accounting background, so a lot of the DA duties are administrative. That being said, if the commissioners don't fund the DA's office, and they don't fund it accordingly, what should be done, regardless if Jimmy Granberry or I am elected, it's going to be a difficult road to hold.
Well, thank you. Terry Shamsie running for District Attorney, Nueces County. What's the best number to call to get involved?
361-960-6300.
That's 360-960-6300.
That's right.
361-960-6300. All right, all right. Terry Shamsie, register to vote if you haven't, and get out there and vote. Thank you, sir.
Thank you
very much.
Good to see you, Joe.
Terry Shamsie, District Attorney. We're going to be right back with Joe Benavides, the judge, Precinct 1, Place 1.